Welcome everyone to a very special Live with CXPA broadcast. I'm Gabe Smith, CCXP, and I'm the content manager for the Customer Experience Professionals Association. So happy to be with you today. Really, since the launch of the Live with CXPA broadcast, we've had a lot of moments of inspiration, a lot of moments of celebration. We've hosted guests from around the world. We've spotlighted some really amazing CX accomplishments that are really intended to help educate you, but also to inspire you, our Live with CXPA viewers. And today's really a little bit different from the broadcasts we've held in the past, but it's also a little bit more of the same. It's different because today we're going to be tackling a really very serious and needed issue and having a dialogue about that, really aimed at being an authentic conversation with fellow CXPA community leaders who are struggling with a big and a really difficult and important task, and that's how to take a more active role in creating greater racial equity in their personal lives, creating greater racial equity in their work relationships, as well as in their CX programs. And it's also a bit more of the same because, if we ever needed something to celebrate, it's that the folks like those that you're going to hear from today are not only taking this difficult journey, but also participating in this conversation because they believe it's so important and because they hope that their stories are going to help you start or continue on this journey of your own. So, but the conversation's not just about the people that you're going to hear from today. It's about you who are tuning in, and whether you're tuning in on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, you enrich these conversations. That's been true of the conversations that we've had in the past, and it is especially true of the conversation that we're going to have today. So, like we always do, I want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from in the world? Type your location into the chat. Let's start to get to know each other a little bit. And also, to help get us started, I want you to take a moment to think about a couple questions to help frame this conversation. We know journeys of racial equity and inclusion can be very personal. So, don't feel the need to answer these questions for anyone but yourself. But if you'd like to share in the chat, I want to hear from you. And want you to think about the attention that has been given to diversity, equity, and inclusion now versus earlier in your life or earlier in your career. How much attention is this topic getting in your part of the world? Is it not getting much? Is it a fair amount? Is it getting a lot of attention? We'd love to hear from you, wherever you are in the world. What's going on with this topic. So would also like, if you'd like, to help to characterize your personal journey in diversity, equity, inclusion. Is this something you're just getting started on? Is this something, that's been a passion or that's been a focus for you? So would love to hear from you. And so welcome to some of the folks who are tuning in. Hey, Lorraine, joining us from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. We have Crystal Montague, CCXP, joining us from Maryland. Crystal's a member of our Diversity Inclusion Advancement Committee, so she's going to be hanging out in the chat today to help drive some conversation as well. Hey, Crystal. We have Shanita joining us from Florida. Rebecca's joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. Glad to have you here, Rebecca. Carlene is tuning in from Jamaica. Wonderful. Great to see you, Carlene. So want to hear from you, both where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any initial thoughts to kind of get us started on, how much attention is this topic getting? Where do you feel like you're at in your journey? And of course, throughout the broadcast, want to hear from you as well. Just type in the comments. You may find that we focus your comment on the screen. Okay, so want to first welcome some special guests to get us started and to really set the stage for our conversation today. Barbie Fink, CCXP, is the chair of CXPA's board of directors. Stephen Ramirez is CEO of Beyond the Arc Inc. and is the chair of CXPA's Diversity Advancement Committee. And last but certainly not least, Greg Melia, CAE, is CXPA's CEO. So welcome to Barbie, Stephen, and Greg. So Barbie, I want to start with you. This question of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why is this issue important to you, and why is it important to CXPA?
Well, I'm going to start with myself first. I grew up in a family where I had a severely autistic brother. And what that meant is that every social encounter that I had in the world was different than what people were used to experiencing. And I learned so much from my brother because I had the opportunity to put myself in his shoes every single day, try to see the world through his eyes, and try to understand what his experience was about. At the same time, I was bullied and teased all the time because I was different. And the way that I dealt with the world around me, the way that I dealt with things as I watched my brother go through the world was really different than the experiences of other kids around. And I eventually learned how to deal with that. It took me a long time. I went through so much angst as a child, but I eventually got to a place where I learned to have humor, where I learned to just look at the world and laugh at the things that were sometimes really challenging to deal with. When I think about the sense of belonging, every single one of us has had an experience in our lives where we have been made to feel like we don't belong. And when I think about that, and when I think about the current state of the world, I believe that it is our responsibility, all of us, to do what we can in this world, to be kind and to have compassion for everybody that we encounter. And if that existed across every interaction that we had, I think our world would be a better place than it is today. And I think we have a lot of work to do. So that's why diversity and inclusion is important to me personally. When I think about the CXPA, specifically our values, I'll start backwards and work my way forwards. One of our values is being a champion. And as I was talking earlier, I believe that it is our responsibility to amplify the voices of people around us and to make sure that there's room in this world for people to be able to speak their truth, for people to be able to be who they are. And that leads me to the next value, which is all about being authentic. And, I think that if we recognize and understand how much compassion is needed in this world to accept people for where they are, I think that sense of authenticity comes through, especially as we look at giving ourselves room to be vulnerable enough to share what is real and true for us. One of our core values is about being connected to each other and having strength in diversity. And every single person has something to contribute in the world around us. This notion of strength and diversity, this notion of belonging, I often hear people say that when they come to the CXPA, they have found their tribe. They feel like they found a place where they belong. And I just want to say that for me, it's all about keeping us connected to each other, keeping us in a place where we can share ideas, where we can bring in differences in thought, where we can come together and collectively create a better future because every single one of us has something important to add and contribute to that.
Yeah, Barbie, you spoke to authenticity and passion, and thank you for your authenticity and passion around this topic and for your leadership around this topic. Just wanted to share a few voices that are coming in on the chat and joining us. We have Sonia is joining us from Uganda. We have Lancelot who's joining us from Dubai. So thank you to all of you who are tuning in Again, thank you, Barbie, for those words. And Stephen, I want to ask you, as the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Advancement Committee, what made you raise your hand, want to be a part of this work?
Well, Gabe, I want to first say I'm really glad to see this event take place live with the CXPA community, right? I think that this is really what it's about, to be a member of the community, to be open to addressing the topics that are, kind of most important, not only in your day job, but really kind of across your life. For me, I think that if I think about us as a profession, people who are focused on the customer experience, the one idea that floats to the top is really about empathy. It's really about helping people and helping organizations understand what it's like to be a human interacting. And so I think that from a professional standpoint, this focus on empathy and on the individual, has always been important. But I also see the dimensions that, not every person is treated the same. Not every person has the same experience. And I was really starting to think about what, as a profession, we could do to bring our tools and our methods to understanding, customer insights to this question around diversity and inclusion. And particularly as I'm struck by, the stories that I see of people who are Black or brown being treated in a different way as customers, in places of business. This really made me think about, knowing some of those organizations and knowing their passion for customer experience. Are these issues hitting the radar? So Gabe, for me, it was a kind of an intersection of, what's personally important, but also as a profession, what do we have that is unique to contribute to this dialogue? Those are some of the thoughts that were going through my head. And then, of course, Greg just made me do it. That's probably the real answer.
Yeah, he's pretty good at twisting arms. But Stephen, thank you for your leadership on this topic. I mean, I know you and I have talked in another previous live program about the importance of empathy in CX, and so I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart. Personally and professionally, I think that's something that we all share in common with this work. So, that's great. And Greg, this conversation today, we've labeled this as a check-in. So let's check in. Take a moment, if you would, and take us through, set the stage for our conversation today that we're going to be having with some CX practitioners here in a minute. Take us through share your perspective on the journey that individuals and organizations have been on over the past year.
Yeah, we live in an amazing time. And it's amazing because there's incredible progress being made, and it's frustrating because I think there's still some very long and difficult realizations that people have suffered through for such a long time. But if we turn the calendar back a year, we know that there were a number of touch point events that really caught the attention, not only of the US, but also the world. Several instances beginning in South Georgia, where a young Black man was shot by and killed by others that felt he shouldn't be jogging in their neighborhood, up to the senseless killing of George Floyd at the knee of a policeman. And what we saw was this huge reaction. And I think it was interesting because in many ways, this was a touch point of awareness of a series of events that were not that unfamiliar to people of color who had seen the civil rights movement get new opportunity, but not enough equal opportunity, and who had seen the Rodney King incident and the riots that were there, but also not change. And Trayvon Martin a few years ago as well. So, last year really became a point, and I think it was a point of heightened awareness. And for the first time, many people and companies started to look and think together. Well, what does this mean? Well, how does this measure up to our values? How does this measure up to what we want the world to be? And so we started to have this increased awareness. And many companies, CXPA included, made an acknowledgement. This is not right. We need to do something about this. And the last 12 months have been a difficult journey for everyone, because it turns out change is not quick and change is not easy, which is no surprise to the CX, community. But I think on individual levels, on corporate levels, on government levels, here in the US and around the world, what we're seeing is that people want to have more empathy. People want to have more equity. People want to make sure that we're treating everyone as humans and to bring that together. But it's not easy to change systems that have been influencing us all for years and decades, if not hundreds of years in some parts of the world. And just as a note on that, I think one thing to keep in mind as we move through is that this journey is highly personal, and it's highly set to your individual context and where you are in the world. It is all about that notion of authenticity and inclusion. We all want to have a place where the opportunity is presented for people to live a fuller and happy life without obstacles, without unfair barriers. If we can do that, we can all have greater success. But it's not easy. And it means that we have to have conversations like this and think about an awful lot of different things. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and hearing all the different nuances, hearing what's worked for individuals, hearing what people are seeing from different organizations and leadership, and hoping that will inspire a brighter future for us all.
Yeah. Amen, Greg. And I know, we're looking forward to talking a little bit more later in the program and bringing y'all back to talk about some of the things that the CXPA is doing more specifically. So we'll look forward to Barbie and Greg welcoming you back here in just a few minutes. And Stephen, thank you for your leadership as well. And thank you all for your authenticity and candor. All right. Great. Okay, I'm excited to welcome my next guest. And Greg talked about, how this is a personal journey. So want to bring in a couple of folks who are also members of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee with CXPA to talk a little bit more about their personal and organization journey in this area. And the first is Kat Stroud, CCXP. She's the Director of CX Consulting at Confirmit. And Stacy Sherman, the head of CX and employee engagement at Schindler Elevator Corporation and the founder of Doing CX Right. So welcome, Kat. Welcome, Stacy. So great to have you on today.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I also wanted to mention too, Crystal Montague, CCXP, a member of our committee, is in the chat, asking some great questions. So we'd love to hear from you in the chat, both as Crystal's posing a great question there, as well as we go. So, Stacy, I want to start with you here. How would you characterize your personal diversity, equity, inclusion journey? When did you begin on this? And, how far along do you feel? From your perspective, how much progress do you feel like you've made personally?
A lot. And I'll say why. So first of all, I had spent my career so much in sales and marketing, most of my career, and I fell into customer experience, CX. And when that happened around 2013, in the way that we define CX now, bigger than customer service per se, my awareness about how the connection of employee experience absolutely impacts that. And so that's when my mission really started around 2013. And then I took it further year over year to really understand what does diversity and inclusion mean and equity. And I thought I knew. And then as more time went on, I realized how much I didn't know. And to help that between what the opportunities in the workplace as well as outside the workplace. One example recently is just graduated from the diversity inclusion certification program from Florida. And the reason I bring that up is that you then realize how much you don't know and that you have the opportunity to learn and drive uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said something that really resonated with me. You said, I thought I knew. And, that's something that I think I share, the events of the last year sort of shaken me out of some notions that I had about my own knowledge. So Kat, I want to pose the same question to you. Tell me on your journey in this area. When did this get started for you, and where do you feel like you stand now?
Yeah, thanks. I think personally, it started a very, very long time ago, but similar to Stacey, I recently realized there's so much more I could know and so much that I don't know. So my personal experience growing up in the UK, second-gen immigrant, felt very marginalized. It felt like a me problem. And I think upon reflection, I didn't really have the language or the vocabulary to explain how I felt. So I felt a lot of anger and hopelessness. And I think, like the others have alluded to, in the last 18 months, there has definitely been an increase in news coverage and more open conversations about systematic issues across the board. And equally, there's been a lot more opportunities to get involved and make change as well. So, for example, the CXPA diversity group in my organization, they started launching employee resource groups, and there's online courses as well, like Stacey mentioned. And I think for me, it no longer feels like an individual or small community problem, but a problem shared amongst everyone. And I think the more conversations we have, the better. And the fact that organizations are willing to have these open conversations means that progress has definitely been made and we're on the right track. We're listening. And I think to tie it back to a CX program, we just need to make sure we listen and then importantly, drive action, such as updating policies and making sure that the change is in place that we all would love to see.
Yeah, I love hearing about your journey and saying that now you're starting to see some concrete changes. Are there other examples, Kat, that you can think of changes that you've seen among your peers, or different attitudes or different sort of awareness or aha moments that you've seen that you want to share?
Yeah, I think one thing that really struck me when we started having these conversations in the workplace was we started talking about identity, and it really made me realize how the topic of identity is much larger than I ever thought. And what I mean by that is that we're all on different parts of our individual journey in terms of how we identify with ourselves and with others. And I think what I've learned in the last 18 months is that the way we identify can grow and change over time. So I think it's this continual kind of learning process about ourselves and also others, of which, we have to just be open to. And I think we have to kind of embrace change and embrace groups that want change and learn how we can adjust to make sure that those marginalized groups feel like they belong and feel like they're included in the world.
Yeah, great point. And Crystal asked a question too, and I want to, encourage the viewers to get involved. She said, for those joining us today, think about how your perspective on DE&I has changed over the last year. What are some actions you can take to further expand your knowledge? And I'd say, what are some actions you have taken as well? I want to hear from you. Stephen also added, as CX professionals, I think we need to help organizations understand how the customer experience differs for people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds. So Stacey, I want to come to you. tell me about, you've mentioned, you've made a lot of progress over the last several years, and, you've completed this work at this certificate at this university. How has your journey impacted the conversations that you're having with your peers? Are these conversations about race and DE&I, are they happening? And to what degree?
Yes, they are happening, both in public and private conversations. And one of the things that I encourage every company to do that my workplace is doing so well, which is not only focusing on physical safety, but the mental safety, driving that mental safety, that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay. You're not going to be dumb for asking a question, and really very intentionally creating that environment, that culture to embrace that safety. And so me as an individual, I'm helping that movement. And then obviously with so many people in the organization I work and outside, that safety component, and it doesn't happen overnight or automatically. So it's that rhythm and movement by all.
Yeah, absolutely. And, starting to see some of those walls coming down. I mean, personally, I have found myself, over the last, 12, 14 months, feeling this sort of combination of empathy and discomfort, and, sort of feeling paralyzed and not knowing what to say, knowing how I'm feeling, but not knowing how to express that. Kat, I'm curious, thinking about conversations that you've had with your peers. I mean, what does this look like? What does this feel like? How has this changed? What are those conversations like on your end?
Yeah, and I totally understand your comment about feeling uncomfortable. I also feel uncomfortable, and I think that's a good thing. I think one of the sticking points for me when I'm having conversations with peers and colleagues is that I've found that one of the most challenging parts for me, which has come as a big surprise, is my own self-reflection. So having these conversations are bringing up questions which I haven't really tackled before. What is my identity? Why do I feel defensive about this topic being raised and talked about? And in the past, when faced with difficult topics of conversation, I may have found it easier to just brush it under the carpet or just go along with the conversation to not upset anyone or run the risk of sounding like I'm preaching about something. So I think coming back to that's made me realize that I've had to learn about myself, about my own identity, and also work on my own education. So, the reason why I was maybe feeling defensive or felt like this conversation was challenging was because I didn't have the words to speak about it, and I didn't know how to speak about it. So it's things like communication skills and just kind of working up your confidence. So the more you talk about it with people that are open and non-judgmental, the more confidence you have. And it's just a big learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, can't underestimate the value of practice and, just getting started and practicing and accepting that this is going to be, difficult and uncomfortable at times. So, I want to kind of shift a bit. We've talked about personal and our personal journeys, and shift a little bit to organizations. So I'd love, Stacey, I want to come back to you on this point, to speak a little bit more about what actions have been taken either by your organization or, organizations that you have seen, that are really doing this work and strengthening diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's really struck you about what organizations have been doing?
Yeah, organizations are doing a lot. When I came to the current workplace where I am in 2018, it was definitely, I think it was one person in where I am that was managing diversity inclusion in the field, the construction, manufacturing and engineering company that I'm in. it's very white male dominated. And so there was intention to now add resources and leaders to drive programs and initiatives, just like CX, right? Not one person owns it. Everyone needs to own it, just like customer experience. And so now diversity inclusion is really spearheaded by a champion, but then owned, top down, bottom up. And really doing a good job of driving programs segmented by different initiatives for different purposes, and recognizing the individual value of different cultures and beliefs. So no longer is it just Merry Christmas. No longer is it even happy holidays to everyone. Now it's, let's get to know what is Passover for someone Jewish celebrating. What is Kwanzaa? What is, and now recognizing each person for their holiday instead of a big blanket approach. So that's just one example where the education and the conversations are now at a deeper level and more personalized. And I feel it, I see it, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, great point. And Kat, I'd love your perspective too. What have you really appreciated as an employee, or seen from others, or heard from others?
Yeah, so I think at Confirm It, we're very much more towards the beginning of our journey and phase. So late last year, around October time, we created employee resource groups. Each group has an executive sponsor, and we were very much encouraged to shape these groups in the way that we needed as employees. So a lot of the initial conversations we had at the beginning were about learning about each other and sharing stories. One initiative I'd like to share with everyone today is something we did called storyboards. And they're just really simple. So it's just one PowerPoint slide where you describe you on one slide. And it's just been so great to see pictures of people's families, people talk about their achievements, their struggles. And I've really been blown away by how open and willing people are to sharing and listening. I definitely feel more connected with my peers after doing that initiative. And just that one initiative alone made me all of a sudden feel so much more supported, and gave me a sense of belonging, especially because, it's a chance for you to hear someone else's story and go, oh, hang on, is this person me just in America? There's so much similarity between us. And I think for me, for someone that hasn't necessarily always had that growing up, it's just been wonderful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that idea of the storyboard. And I'd love, to hear from our audience too, if there are tactics that, you want to give a positive shout out to your employer for implementing, that's really helping to strengthen DE&I in your organization. I would love to hear about it in the comments section. And Stacey, you had mentioned sort of this in the early days, you had kind of one person, who's overseeing DE&I in your organization. And, similar to CX, these are sometimes people who were on small teams that are trying to affect big change and work across their organization. So, would love to, hear from you. Are there any other ways that, your DE&I journey has really changed your thinking about your CX strategy?
Yes. And it comes down to both the employee experience, employee engagement, how I am as a leader of people that are very diverse from different countries, and then recognizing the customers we serve are also very diverse. And so everything we do is personalized, customized, and how important communication is. Not just from talking, but listening, rephrasing to make sure that what I said is what was heard, and vice versa, more than ever before, because interpretation varies. And by acknowledging that someone is different, they will hear things differently. They'll say things differently. Even the words we choose are differently. And by honoring the way they hear it and say it, even though they might be from, let's say, overseas and they're in America. We're human beings. We're human beings with experiences. So point is that I'm hearing better. I'm validating others more. I'm appreciating people and also taking a chance to say, I don't understand, or I'd like to learn more, and use it as an opportunity to talk rather than hide from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And Kat, kind of same question for you. As you think about the DE&I journey that you've so eloquently outlined over the years, and you think about also your journey with CX. What's that relationship like? What questions has that DE&I journey raised about your CX program or your CX strategy?
Yeah, and I think others have alluded already to kind of how well DE&I and CX thinking kind of sit together. And I kind of like reflect on the journey we've taken for DE&I at the organization. And I think it's very similar to how we would embark on a CX measurement journey. We've identified the pain points. We've come together. We now have a plan of action, and we're now going to try and make things right and do things and make action. I think in terms of kind of real life experience of my DE&I journey affecting my CX journey, just one example that comes to mind that's happened recently is when I get asked by a client to review a survey, I look through that survey in a whole new different light. And I think it's exactly what Stacey said. I think you just become more aware of how words are phrased and how they could be interpreted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's something to that, this idea of like, I'm never going to look at a survey the same way again. I think once this conversation really started to shift over the last year, one of the things that I was thinking about, my role as content manager, I try to create content, try to curate content that people are going to find relevant to help, solve CX challenges and advance their careers and all of that. And, one way I do that is through member profiles, trying to write stories about CXPA members that, are going to share with the global community around, what's this person done in their career? What are some successes that they've had? What are some challenges they've had? Sharing those out, sort of recognize, there's an inherent inequity in some of the stories that we tell because people are in, large corporations, highly prominent roles, but they're also, members in other parts of the world, doing amazing work. And so part of sort of the journey that I've been thinking about this year is just reaching out and getting to know people whose names I don't know, all around the globe. And it's been incredibly rewarding and trying to surface stories. And so, I want to come back and kind of pose this question to you all. What are some concrete actions that, you've really taken to try to advance, the cause of DE&I in your CX programs? So Stacey, I want to come to you. What's something that, you want to share that you're proud of?
I'm proud that I will find opportunity even when one doesn't exist. What I mean by that is having just taken the certification program, which happened to be with 125,000 other people around the world at this university. And rather than be done with the program, I decided to connect with people and launch a new Slack group, a platform. It's kind of like a mini Facebook in itself. Slack, some people might not know it, but it's a place where we can now continue the conversations and not let it just stop because the course ended. And we all could do that in anything that we are learning. I think the onus is to start communities or join communities and keep sharing what we learn because we're never done.
Great point. Kat, same question to you. What's something that you're proud of?
Yeah, I think I'm proud of speaking up. I'm proud of being part and, encouraging these uncomfortable conversations. And I'm also proud that I think I've moved away from thinking, that this information should just be handed to me, to doing my own research. So if I want to learn more about, a group of people or a problem or something that someone else is struggling with, then I look it up.
Yeah, fantastic. Kat, Stacy, want to bring you back in here in a minute. Thank you for your candor and authenticity and vulnerability around this topic. I want to bring you back in here in a minute to talk about some other ways that we can enhance CX through a DE&I lens. But first, I want to bring back in Greg and Barbie to talk a little bit more about next steps. We've heard some great things about the personal journey that Kat and Stacey have been on. But I want to turn the conversation to CXPA's journey. So, Barbie, I want to start with you. How would you characterize CXPA's journey in this area?
So I think, like any journey, it is never done. I feel like for the CXPA, we're at the very beginning of this journey. And the reason why is because while we are looking organizationally around the things that we can do, when we look at the world around us, when we look at the inequities that exist for customers, regardless of what organization they're working with, as CX professionals, as catalysts for change, we have the ability to influence all of that and to deepen the understanding around all of that. And when I look at the state of the world around us, I'm not seeing the change that I want to see yet. So I believe that the CXPA, the way that we connect with our community, the way that we bring CX professionals together, the way that we help people be more successful in being a catalyst for change, has the ability to ripple out and to touch things that create broader changes for the world around us. So I believe that we are at the very beginning of our journey.
Yeah, that's great. Greg, what are your thoughts? Are we at the beginning of the journey?
Yeah, I would say that we are making some solid progress. Progress being slow, but progress being important to acknowledge. I mean, this conversation that we're having today wouldn't have been possible without the Diversity Advancement Committee. You've heard and corresponded in the chat with several of the different members. It wouldn't be possible without the support of the CXPA Board of Directors, which is the most diverse board that we've had in the history of CXPA. It wouldn't be possible without the global community, the participation on this LinkedIn Live and the new networks and partners that are working with CXPA around the world. And it wouldn't be possible without, Gabe, your focus on highlighting and bringing forward, not only the examples that you talked about, but also making sure that we're bringing forward the award applicants from different corners of the world. We're bringing forward stories and techniques to help people understand how to better serve underrepresented communities. I'm thinking of the piece that you did on how contact centers can improve serving deaf individuals that prefer in their identity to speak through sign language, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, you can text us or you can email us.
Right.
How do we meet people where they are? So I think that we're really making some good progress, but I agree with Barbie that, these are sort of the table stakes, as people like to say. I'm happy with the progress we've made in 12 months, but I'm excited about what we'll make in the coming 12, in the coming 24, in the coming 36.
Yeah. This conversation just reinforced to me how part and parcel of DE&I is to CX and how much we need to be in lockstep. And Lancelot, I want to share this comment Lancelot made too. He said, as an expat in the UAE, the org I worked with encouraged celebrating local and global festivals. As Stacy mentioned, it allowed me to dig deeper and get a sense, a feeling, and understanding of the celebrations here, and helped connect with my colleagues, leading to long-lasting professional association connections to date. So I think that's a great point.
I mean, I think that's so important that these things happen on a local basis so that you can have these conversations with the other people in Dubai or in Atlanta, Boston, Toronto, Melbourne, all whom have sponsored great conversations through CXPA networks. But, I think that one of the themes that I heard in Barbie's opening comments and that I heard echoed again throughout, that it is an area that we're going to explore more and bring back to the community is actually the fourth pillar of DE&I: diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. How do we explore what it means to employee satisfaction and retention when an employee feels engaged and that they belong and are valued on the team? And how does a company benefit when a customer feels that they truly belong to the organization instead of just feeling like it's a transactional interaction? So yeah, we've just defined CX, and so I think that this is something that has to be talked about together.
Yeah, one of the things I love, over the past year is how much our virtual programming has enabled us to cross those traditional, geographic boundaries. So if you're a CX professional in Florida who wants to attend a CXPA, network meeting in Australia or India, you have the ability to do that. And I think it's so important, not just from a topic perspective to gain insights on those different topics, but to really feel that, sense of inclusion and closeness, and that, we're not separated.
And I have to say, this last year where we've been spending so much time on the screen like this has really been a blessing. The number of connections that we've been able to have and conversations we've been able to have with people who are physically apart from us, but we can connect emotionally and intellectually and conversationally and socially, through virtual programs, that's been a real gift.
Yeah.
It's also been a real gift to get to meet Barbie's dog and get to meet your two gorgeous girls, Gabe, and to find out that, we all have parts of our identity that are beyond just this, that's in this little frame right now. And how do we treat one another as a full human?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Barbie, any other thoughts you wanted to share?
I'm reflecting on what Greg said about the frame that we're in here and how much richer the world is around us. And when we think about our customers, the fact that we engage with them on a specific level to help them meet a need that they might have in terms of how they engage with our organization. But it's just so important to reflect on and recognize that our customers are human beings that are so much larger than the parts that we see of them when they are doing business with us. And I think about that all the time. It's all about how we bring ourselves forward as humans and how we engage and interact with each other in that respect. And so, I think about this little frame and I think about what we see in the people around us, and just the notion of thinking bigger, understanding that there's so much more depth there, is just something that I carry with me every day.
Yeah, I agree. I want to bring back in really quickly for just a last question or two, Kat and Stacy, because I want to talk about, how can we, integrate DE&I into the CX work that we're doing. I know we touched on this a little bit, but Kat, one of the things I think is cool about today is we talked about creating safety. We've created a safe space here to feel comfortable sharing, some of our experiences and our emotions around that. So how do we start to do that in our organizations, and how can that inform our work with CX? Okay, Kat, you're muted. I'm gonna unmute you here real quick. There we go.
Sorry. Two things come to mind. I think the first thing is, let's question how we are doing as an organization with our customers and our clients. And the perfect place I can see that, being put in is in our relationship survey. So for my organization. And then follow up with that. So incorporate DEI in the communication we send outwards to our clients and our customers. And so if, we are really taking DEI improvements seriously, then we need to share this with employees and our clients. And then it continues, then we need to ask again, are we doing this right? Is there anything we've missed? What else can we do for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And Stacy, kind of, similar question. How do we highlight this connection between DE&I and all the CX competencies? How do we partner? How do we as CX professionals partner with, DE&I, whether they're staff or at least get involved with these initiatives?
Yes, I think it's by doing. It's doing, and then people really start to feel and see it. I caution people checking a box. I caution people just doing something one time. It is like CX. It is a constant, intentional practice. And again, I don't think it's about boasting anything from a company view. I think it's walking the talk, and the employees will naturally share how the brand is really advocating for this.
Yeah, great point. And just wanted to share a comment that one of our viewers shared in the chat. Said, let's keep the conversation going. We're just beginning to understand each other and how our differences can make us and our organization stronger. I feel like that's a great comment to sort of encapsulate the dialogue that we've had today. Great start, but we're going to keep the conversation going. Really feels like we could go on and on for another hour today, but just out of respect for everyone's time, I want to wrap up today's conversation and just share that we're going to continue this conversation on Live with CXPA. We're looking forward to another conversation in July on the nature of belonging. So hope to see you there. But I want to hear from you. My last request for you as viewers, let us know what you want to know more about. Is this advancing your personal DE&I journey? Is this advancing your organization's journey, your CX program's journey with DE&I? What do you want to know more about related to the topic? That is going to inform the conversations that we continue to have. So hope that we keep the conversation going with you. I'd like to invite you to check out CXPA's event calendar. Join an event near you. Join an event across the globe. We want to make sure that you get involved in the conversation. So with that, I want to say thank you for joining us. Hope you have a great week, and we're looking forward to keeping the conversation going soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Gabe.